All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the channel. It is Wednesday, and you know what that means. Time for some Wednesday wisdom and diving deeper into the lost wisdom of the Pharaohs and the Hermetica. This is a Timothy Freke and Peter Gandy authored book. It is also a Tarsher Cornerstone edition, and we are going through it and reading through it and extrapolating on it for purposes of expanding the mind, teaching, and commentary, and increasing our awareness of the nature of reality so that we may become enlightened minds or find at least a little more illumination, so to speak, ladies and gentlemen. Hope you got yourself some tea or a beverage of your choice. This tea is always fantastic. And the tea says today, ladies and gentlemen, your breath fills you with energy anywhere and anytime that you need it. So remember the art and the power of breathing. And maybe before we go into today's section, section 16, entitled The Ignorance of the Soul, in this chapter, Hermes explains that human life, our lives, is an opportunity to come to know God, but that to fulfill this divine purpose, we must cease to be enslaved by the body. What does that mean? Well, we'll dive into that in just a second. But I would like to reference a timeless classic. It comes to us from a gentleman by the name of Franz Barton. And so, let's see if we can find it real quick. The Mystery of Breathing. Page 73. Oh, look, we're almost there. 74. Here we go. The mystery of breathing. So listen to this, ladies and gentlemen, and take it with a grain of salt, if you will. Careful consideration should be given to the breathing exercises. Now remember, this is in reference to what the tea was telling me over here on the little paper things they have hanging from the tea bags. And it said, your breath fills you with energy anywhere and anytime you need it. So, in God's creation, every living creature breathes. Without breath, there is no life. The magician cannot be satisfied with just that alone, though. So, he has to know considerably more than that. He is just inhaling oxygen with nitrogen, which are absorbed by the lungs, and that he exhales nitrogen. Like, where are we going with this, Chase? Well, we're getting into the mystery of breathing, and through the mystical, spiritual philosophy of Hermetics, because what we've been researching here is Hermetics on this series. So I thought I'd give you a little more reference and show you that this philosophy goes much deeper than just the Hermetica, in reference to what the tea said about our breath filling us with energy. And so the magician cannot be satisfied with, oh yeah, everything just breathes, and without breath there is no life, right? We are deeper thinkers, ladies and gentlemen. We're trying to figure out the mysteries of the nature of reality through constant contemplation, to come to know, to come to true knowledge of Atum, or I think of it as the universe. But so everything that we require to live, everything that maintains life, and in other words, breathing and nourishment, is tetrapolar, has four elements plus the fifth, which is the life element, the vital element, or the Akasha principle. as it was explained in the theoretical part of this book dealing with the elements. The air we inhale possesses a finer degree of density than material, physical food. However, both are of the same nature according to the universal laws. Both are tetrapolar and serve to keep the body alive. Let us take a closer look at the function of breathing. I had no idea we were going to go this direction, ladies and gentlemen. This is just the tea telling me what to do here. And then my mind's like, oh, let's talk about the mystery of breathing. Because I bet not everybody has heard this. Excuse me. So, the air we inhale, okay, we just went through that. Let's take a closer look at the function of breathing. Oxygen is subject to the fire element. Nitrogen is subject to the water element. The air element is the intermediary element in between. The earth element is the element which holds the oxygen and nitrogen together. The akasha, or ether element, is the fifth element, the lawful, the causal, or divine principle. Just as in the great universe and nature, so in this instance as well, the elements have their electric and magnetic fluids, their polarity, positive and negative, to create the field. We've been talking about this in this series and in this philosophy. This is just getting way deeper into it. But I wanted to teach you the secret of breathing here. Even when you breathe normally or instinctively, your body will only be supplied with as much elemental substance as is necessary for its normal maintenance or functioning. Now, think of this like a vehicle, how you need to have the right fluids or the right fuels, rather, because not all fluids or not all fuels are fluids. So if you have enough fuel, so when we're breathing normally, our body gets enough fuel through the elemental nature of the air and food, everything that we intake, tea. Thanks, tea, for sending us on this lesson today. We will be getting to the 16th section of the Hermetica and ignorance of the soul, coming to the knowledge of God. But right now we're starting with the mystery of breathing. It becomes a different matter when you begin to breathe consciously. Remember yesterday the T said live consciously, and that seemed to be the theme of yesterday's Tuesday Tao. If you missed it, be sure to check that out. But this idea of breathing unconsciously or on purpose, because remember the supply of fuel, or it's called elemental substance in this philosophy, the supply of fuel is in accordance with the consumption of the substance. So whether it be food or air, I hope you're getting this. It becomes a different matter when we begin to do this on purpose or breathe consciously. When you transfer a thought, idea, or concept, whether abstract or concrete, into the air you are about to inhale. Now, this might be getting up in the clouds for some people, but if you're not ready to go here, then that's just fine with me. This isn't for everybody, ladies and gentlemen. And pass it on to the air substance through the electric and magnetic fields or fluids, as it describes it. This impregnated substance of the air then has two tasks when it's directed through the lungs to the blood vessels. First, the material parts of the particles of the elements serve to maintain the body. So it goes into a lot of other stuff here, ladies and gentlemen, that we're not going to go into, but plainly put, as you can see, quantity and the quality of air when we are breathing gives you energy, fills you with energy. It gives you a fuel that there is a mystical understanding of. But that's for another day. So with that being said, now that we've learned a little bit about the mystery of breathing, let's learn about how we can come to know God, or Atum, in this sense, through this section entitled The Ignorance of the Soul. Timothy Freke and Peter Gandy begin by saying, quote, "The limitations imposed on the soul by the physical body mean that human life is inevitably difficult. But our hope of eternal life rests on how we live our present lives. Earthly existence is an opportunity to train the soul so that at death it does not lose its way, but travels straight to heaven." I'll say I'm already having trouble with this because this goes contrary to the way that I think of these kind of things. This to me sounds like a Christian description of, you don't want to sin, otherwise you're going to go to hell. And if you don't live right, then you're damned. And I don't believe any of that, because that was a creation by the Holy Roman Empire, which we learned previously in this same book in the history of the Hermetica, which was the beginning of this series. And it's been referenced often throughout. So I wonder what we'll learn here going a little bit further, and what Thoth, or Hermes Trismegistus, actually said on this subject. But so, everything material, even our own body, is foreign to our essential spiritual nature. See, that's contrary to the Christian theories. So we're going back and forth here with spiritual philosophy, which is the point. We're not getting hung up in whether it's supposed to be this way or that way. We are just contemplating. And remember what Hermes said all the way back in section 1, the prophecies of Hermes, is that pure philosophy, and I will remind us on every one of these videos if I can remember, that pure philosophy is spiritual striving through constant contemplation to attain true knowledge of Atum, the one God, the universe, the source, the force, ladies and gentlemen. So that's what we're talking about, and that's what we're doing here, contemplating philosophy. Unfortunately, knowing even though that our body is material and our essential nature is spiritual, we become so caught up with the transitory sensual pleasures of our mortal life that we are unaware of our eternal nature, of our eternal soul, our spiritual nature. And we forget, this is funny, I've been referencing this Bill Hicks quote for like 3 weeks now, and I think it was Guerrilla Press putting in the comments a couple weeks ago, Bill Hicks for president. And it was the weirdest timing, because I keep thinking of that quote now. But it's like we forget. It's like we've been on a ride at an amusement park, and it's got thrills and chills and funny colors and ups and downs and goes around. And after we've been on the ride for so long, we seem to think that it's real. And we forget that it's just a ride. And then some people come back to us and try to remind us, hey, man, your furrows of worry and your bank account and your struggles, it's just a ride. Relax. And then we get rid of those people. He says we kill them, but I don't think that's as funny as it tends to be when he tells the joke as a wonderful comedian. But with that being said, unfortunately, we've become so caught up in this transitory sensual reality that we are unaware of our eternal soul. And the body should be the slave of our soul, not its master. Much like the ego makes a terrible master, but a fine servant. And same with our bodies, ladies and gentlemen. So, we all know this as spiritual students on this path, but we know it is not the purpose to try to totally get rid of the body because it is part of this journey and it houses our soul and our spiritual nature. And so Hermes, the book continues, assures us that there is a way to free ourselves from the torments of life. These, he tells us, are simply caused by our own ignorance. And that makes sense. I mean, if we don't have anybody out here guiding us, you can imagine since the fall of Alexandria and the beginning of the Dark Ages and the destruction of enlightened minds. I was just learning yesterday about the pyramid temple of Iessa in the Nile Valley. And when the Holy Roman Empire, intolerant Roman Church state, came in there and deemed every other religion in the world other than theirs paganism and wanted to centralize all power of the empire to the emperor, the head of the church and the state. This is a different subject, really, but it relates to what caused this ignorance. And when that happened, and they shut down the temple of Iessa and thousands of other temples and spiritual sites across the realm, that they destroyed the times of enlightened minds and illuminated men and women. Because, well, they had their reasons, and we all know about that. But that ushered in the time of the Dark Ages, where there was not many that were enlightened, and those who were must have stayed hidden for their own survival's sake. But now, as Hermes prophesied, he says, in future generations, there will come a time. The student of pure philosophy studies the sciences not as fanciful theories, but as devotion to the Tao, the universe, Atum, God, nature, reality, force, that which cannot be named, because they reveal a universe perfectly ordered by the power of number and by magnitudes of physical things and forces of fire in the depths of sea, leads to a reverent awe at the Creator's skill and wisdom. I foresee that in times to come, clever intellectuals will mislead the minds of men, turning them away from this pure philosophy. Does this make you weep? He says, there is worse to follow. But he also says later that there will come a time where those of us will be ready to return. I was trying to find that. That might be at the very beginning. It starts off with the first translation of the words. Here, last words of thrice great Hermes. So funny, I was thinking about this before I started the video. Wise words, although written by my decaying hand, remain imperishable throughout time, imbued with the medicine of immortality by the All-Master, be unseen and undiscovered by all those who will come and go. This is the Dark Ages and all those who will come and go that I think he was referencing, wandering the wastelands of life, taught in what was talked about here, that we would be ignorant of our immortal nature and be stuck into the transitory nature and the sensual pleasures of our physical and mortal body and forget of our immortal soul. But be hidden, he says, Thoth, Hermes, until an older heaven births human beings who are worthy of your wisdom. I think we are done with the Dark Ages. According to the Yuga cycle calendars, I think we're into the bronze, and then the silver, and then the gold. I mean, the Dark Age was the smallest at the bottom, and then the bronze gets a little bit bigger. Like, not referencing times in our history where we discovered metals and we're making progress. I think that's a misunderstanding as well, maybe. But with that being said, these are times of levels of consciousness. And so, I think we are in a time where, like Hermes said here, until an older heaven births human beings who are worthy of your wisdom. And having sounded this prayer over the works of his hands, the sage god Thoth was received into the sanctuary of eternity, where I guess then he went on to weigh the souls, or maybe that there's a lot that can be taken out of all of this, ladies and gentlemen. And there's a reason why I go on these tangents, because I think it's relevant to everything that we're learning in this journey. So if you're getting value from being here, then thank you so much. I love and appreciate you, and I don't ask you to do anything. Now, why give yourselves to death when you could be immortal? Hermes asks. He tells us these, he tells us, are simply caused by our own ignorance. He exhorts us to free ourselves from our enslavement, develop our inner vision, and use the power of our mind to experience the mind of God. And this has been talked about plenty in earlier chapters. Plenty. We went through, I mean, this is one of the key points, is that we have this. I was telling this to someone a couple of days ago, how Christianity has this, we are created in the image of God. And a lot of people think that means like, oh yeah, God looks like a human body. But that's probably a lot deeper. The meaning is probably a lot deeper than that, being that simple, ladies and gentlemen. I mean, do you really think it would just be that simple? Like, oh yeah, God just looks like us. Or we, because, you know, we turn it around, say, okay, that must mean that we look like God, and whatever we look like is what God looks like. It's silly, the way of thinking we have about these mystical ideas in such a common day, you know, everyday kind of level, without going much deeper where we go here. But I'm going to leave that because I think you have an idea where I was going. And so it's like, in this philosophy, our mind is a reflection or a miniature version, an image of the mind of God. And so we can develop an inner vision through, what is it? Constant contemplation, spiritual striving, pure philosophy to attain the true knowledge of Atum, to experience the mind of God, to use our minds and develop our minds through practice. That's step number one in these other books, is development of the mind. And honestly, I think that would take 5 lifetimes. So we better get started now. Why give yourselves to death when you can be immortal? Hermes asks. He assures us that the heaven of peace awaits those who rise to his challenge. Man is made in the image of God. So funny that I would say that line there. And can therefore rise to become one with God. Remember last week we referenced the, is it not written in your law that I have said, you are gods? Only like can know like. Only like can know like. It is our fear that separates us from truth. and our lack of belief in ourselves that binds us to the earth. Man, each and every one of us, man and women and children, have the power to ascend into heaven. Not the heaven we've been taught about, ladies and gentlemen, with cherubs and floating, not the Christian paintings that we've seen from centuries before, that were side by side with the paintings of hell and fire and devils, which never existed until, at least the imagery we all think of, that never existed until the 15th, 16th centuries. They made it up to keep us trapped in fear and guilt because you're a sinner and you were born a sinner and your essential nature is terrible and needs to be cleaned up the whole time. This is not the essential teaching. This was the teaching of those who sacked and burnt and destroyed the mysteries of our beautiful and wonderful ancient spiritual traditions, which they called paganism. And then they sold us this fear through this imagery and this deception that we need to be loyal servants to the church and not give reverence to our great power and divinity that is given to each one of us as we come into existence. Both of these things are taught, and it is a lack of belief in ourselves and fear, this fear that we've been taught in our societies for hundreds of years, at least those of us who are raised to fear spirituality and God and all of these deeper possibilities to keep us in control. I'm sorry, I go off on those tangents a lot. I have nothing against Christian people. It's just what had happened in the past by the leaders to create the structure of the system. Common people are just common people, and a lot of us are just sheeple, and we're too stupid to even know who the leader of the flock is and what the real purpose of the direction we're going is. So that's why we're here, ladies and gentlemen, to teach you to think for yourself, ask questions and question answers, and seek to achieve and maintain happiness in your own enlightenment through a greater awareness and understanding of the nature of reality and the mysteries of our history, ladies and gentlemen. So, with that rant about fear being what gives us this ignorance that we've had and been taught for so long, that separates us from this knowledge and this belief in ourselves, that we can have a much greater quality of life when we come to know that we have a power that we've been told that we don't have. Man has the power to ascend into quote unquote heaven, and yet crawls on our belly through the dust. In Hermes' eyes, mankind's greatest error is that he has the power to know God and yet does not use it. Simply wishing to know God is enough to set us on the road to enlightenment. I mean, we could end the video there, but we got all the words of Hermes and Thoth, translated, of course, but talking on this subject, which is powerful. I think this is one of the more important subjects. Great spiritual knowledge of the ignorance of how to know God and the ignorance of the soul. I probably shouldn't have done that part about the mystery of breathing at the beginning, because everybody that's coming for what I put in the title will be like, this dude's not even talking about the subject. I don't care, though. The universe will take care of it, ladies and gentlemen. So why give yourselves when you could be immortal? Why not use your mind? Simply wishing to know God is enough to set us on the road to illumination and enlightenment. The spiritual path is not difficult, for as we awaken from our ignorance, the Tao, the source, the universe, Atum, God. As we awaken from our ignorance, God comes to us. At times and places where we least expect it, suddenly we are aware that it is with us, this power that does all things, while seemingly doing nothing at all. The end of the spiritual journey is the realization that he, whatever you want to call God, the description for reality and that which is responsible for its production and continuation. Everything we discussed in the living cosmos and contemplating creation and the being of Atum and all the previous chapters earlier and everything we've talked about in many other videos on this channel. The end of the spiritual journey is the realization that God, the Tao, the force is everywhere and is everything. And if God is universal, then that means there is nowhere that it is not, which means that it is you, and it is me, and it is the grass, and it is the tree. Especially the spiders, because most people hate spiders. And so it's important to challenge ourselves in those areas where we dislike certain kind of creatures, to remember that they are just as much a part of God. They are us. If we are God and they are God, then we would be hurting ourselves by killing the spiders. Now, we don't feel that way when we're here in the ignorance of the soul, trapped to the attachment of our mortal experience of the physical body. With that being said, ladies and gentlemen, hope you're ready, hope you're comfy, and we are diving into the words of Hermes Trismegistus, thrice greatest, the legendary Egyptian sage god Thoth. Ignorance of the soul. Thoth begins by saying, it is impossible to be permanently happy while attached to a body. A man should train his soul in this life so that when he enters the other world, where he is able to see Atum, he does not lose his way. Each soul hope of eternal life rests in his life here on earth. But many cannot believe this, seeing it as an empty story to be laughed at. For the possessions of this life are too pleasant, and such pleasures grip the soul by the throat, holding it down to earth. Our possessions possess us. We are not born with possessions, but acquire them later. Everything a man uses to gratify his body is alien to his original godlike nature. Not only possessions, even the body is foreign to our true self. The mind of the cosmos is known through thought alone. A soul with no inner vision is blind to Atum's goodness, tossed by the sea of passions, which the body breeds. What fire burns like impurity? What hunger? What hungry predator has the power to maim the body as impurity does to mutilate the soul? Can't you see the torture that the impure soul endures? It shrieks, I am burning, I am on fire. I do not know what to say or do. I am devoured by the miseries that possess me. Are not such cries the appeals of a soul in torment? Such a soul bears the body, like a burden as its master, not as its slave. Tear off this cloak of shadows. Tear off this web of ignorance and these shackles of decay. This living death, this conscious corpse, this portable tomb, this robber in thy house, this enemy that hates all that you love, this garment that smothers you and holds you down. Ignorance floods the land, its currents sweep you away. Do not be borne downstream. Make use of the backflow. Seek the safe haven of liberation. Anchor there and find a guide to lead you to the house of knowledge. There you will see with the heart the brilliant brightness. If you shut your soul up in your body and demean yourself, saying, I cannot know, I am afraid, I cannot ascend to heaven, then what have you to do with Atum? Wake up, your sleeping soul. Why give yourself to death when you could be immortal? You are drunk with ignorance of Atum. It has overpowered you, and now you are vomiting it up. Empty yourself of darkness, and you will be filled with light. Then there is no greater mistake than to have the power to know Atum and not use it. Simply wishing and hoping to know him is a road that leads straight to goodness. It is an easy road to travel. Everywhere Atum will come to meet you. Look, and he appears, at times and at places when you least expect it. While you are awake or asleep, when you travel by land or water, by night or by day, whilst you are speaking or silent. This is because Atum is all. Atum is all. And that ends the words of Thoth, Hermes Trismegistus, on the ignorance of the soul. Wow, ladies and gentlemen, that was profound. That was powerful. And that was one of the more fascinating sections so far. I really liked the intro to that section. And then the way it kind of changed in the description here in the words of Hermes. I thought it's so interesting there that it did mention the whole I'm burning, I'm on fire thing, this vision that we get sold to us that gives us this fear of hell from, certain theologies. And I think it's funny how it relates it here to having caused impurity. Like it's talking about the things that we do with the physical body, the sea of passions which the body breeds. And then, you can think about all the harming to the body by our gluttony, or all the impurity done to the soul through our other, see, gluttony is a sin, and that's a Christian thing. So, you see how we have to unwrap these layers of indoctrination that we've been given on all these subjects, at least me, in my upbringing. Hopefully you don't have to do that, and it's much easier for you. But what I'm getting here is this is a metaphorical description of a spiritual harming of our true nature. through our actions done in this temporary physical experience. Not to say that we don't have many and many and many and many of these temporary physical experiences and opportunities to learn and grow and advance our soul, which was talked about before in the incarnation of the soul. I think that was a couple episodes. Yeah, and then in death and immortality last time. That was a deep one. Hopefully you didn't miss that. And I also loved it that he said it's impossible to be permanently happy, because I am one of those people that's like, seek to achieve and maintain happiness. Because, I don't like to see people suffering, and I hope as many of us as possible know techniques that we can use to bring happiness to life, to decrease the overall amount of suffering. But it is important to be reminded that it is impossible to be permanently happy. I mean, unless you're like the stone Buddha and you're just like a rock. But even the 10th bull had to come back. After enlightenment, you don't just become a rock. You have to come back into life and continue to, metaphorically continue chopping wood and carrying water, even before and after enlightenment. But in this life, we should train our minds and our souls so that we are able to come to know God. Because if we have the ability through our minds to know God, then why do we not use it? In Hermes' eyes, mankind's greatest error is that he or she has the power to know God and yet does not use it. And literally all we have to do is simply wish and hope to know the Tao, the force, the universe, grand organized design, God, God, Atum, whatever it is for you, that which shall remain nameless. Why? Well, let's see if it talks about it in both of the books sitting next to me. The being of Atum. To conceive of Atum is difficult. To define him is impossible. The imperfect and impermanent cannot easily apprehend the eternally perfected. Atum is whole and constant. In himself, he is motionless, yet he is self-moving, incorruptible and everlasting, imperceptible to the senses. He is too great. Here, this is the part about the name. Whatever name you give God, this is why I always go, Great Spirit, Tao, God, Atum, Force, Source, Universe, whatever. Because this is the truth, is that it is too great to be called by any name, even if that name be Atum, from the words of Hermes, thrice greatest, the sage God, because it is hidden and yet obvious everywhere. And being known through thought alone, it is bodiless, even though we can see its form before our very eyes in everything we look at. And there is nothing which it is not. So therefore it has no name, because all names are its name. If you say grass, well, that's part of God. And so grass is God. Okay? Okay? You getting this? Maybe I'm just yelling at myself now, ladies and gentlemen, for the fun of it. But because all names are his names, it is the unity of all things. And I'm not so on with the masculine that Hermes is giving to Atum here, but it describes the masculine, the feminine, all of these other things later. So, but we must know it by all names and call everything God, Tao, Force. That's why I give extra names, because a lot of people think of God as like a separate thing that is not everything. But we are it, and it is everything. Boom, ladies and gentlemen. So all we have to do is simply wish and hope to know what it is, and a road will appear before us. I mean, not physically, but spiritually, that will lead straight to goodness. And it is an easy road to travel. These are the words of Hermes. Everywhere, Atum will come to meet you. Look, and he appears at times and places when you least expect. And this is also a lesson in manifesting. While you are awake or asleep, or when you travel by water or by land, by day or by night. This is because Atum is all. So now let's go to the reference I was going to do here in the first verse of the Tao Te Ching, which is our Tuesday series. First verse of the Tao Te Ching: the Tao that can be told, or the God, or the Atum, or whatever, that can be told is not the eternal. The name that can be named is not the eternal name, because the Tao is both named and nameless. As nameless, it is the origin of all things. As named, it is the mother of 10,000 things. Ever desireless, one can see the mystery. Ever desiring, one sees only the manifestations. And the mystery itself is the doorway to all understanding. Is it amazing how the Tao Te Ching sounds very similar to what we were just reading there about the being of Atum, and how it is too great to be called by the name. It is everywhere, yet hidden, named and nameless. I mean, it's the same. We are learning similar philosophies from two entirely different spiritual traditions or spiritual philosophies. And it is teaching us. This is what I've come to understand the more that I research. And I hope you get this book for yourself to put it on your shelf so that you can go along this journey with me and reference and study. Because as you can see, whether it be from the Tao Te Ching or from the Hermetica or many other spiritual philosophies, that there is an overarching theme and a true knowledge and a pure philosophy. Boom, ladies and gentlemen, that is a boom to wisdom and a boom to the wisdom of the ages and Wednesday wisdom. I really enjoyed this, and I know you did as well. So thank you so much for being here and joining me in this journey, seeking after knowledge, seeking after truth, seeking after enlightenment, and trying to increase the quality of our lives through a greater awareness and understanding of reality. And so, with that being said, remember to seek to achieve and maintain happiness through enlightenment, a greater awareness, and a greater understanding of the nature of reality. And seek to discover the mysteries of our history. And also remember that there is no way to happiness, because happiness is the way. And if we can create ability within ourselves to bring happiness to life, then all those things we've been telling ourselves, oh, when I have this much money, or if I'm that kind of person, that becomes irrelevant, because then we already are there. And then the journey to where we want to go is wonderful, hopefully. All right, ladies and gentlemen, once again, thank you so much to those of you that joined me here, especially in the premieres. It's great to interact with you and go back and forth. Mostly just me and A1, but you know, some others jump in, Gorilla Press every now and then. And Miguel left a comment yesterday. I really appreciate that. Shout out to you. And so thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Be sure to expand the description. I still need to update my Etsy shop. That's probably got nothing there. As well as a link to C60 Purple Power, though, the most powerful antioxidant known to man. Give yourself the gift of health, ladies and gentlemen. All right. Have a good day, ladies and gentlemen. I will see you next Tuesday, hopefully in between now and then with some shorts, kind of chopping these two videos into smaller sections that are a bit more digestible. But this is the way I like to do it. The birds are flying around on the porch out here. I better water the plants. Better water the plants, ladies and gentlemen. Be the change that you want to see. Be the example that we want to set, and continue to look for the mystical nature of reality. And use your mind. This was the lesson of today. Use the power of our minds to see God and to come to know God. Because remember, that's really the purpose of life that the Hermetic philosophy teaches, is that once you realize that you are a part of creation and everything around you you see is creation and that is God, and the whole functioning of it and the processes of the universe is God, then you have an awe and a wonder and an appreciation of the beauty of the workings of all of that. And then you tend to it. Simple. Purpose of life, ladies and gentlemen. All right. Love you and appreciate you. And we'll see you next Tuesday.